Okay, things are getting really tense in the Middle East. We're looking at a high-stakes standoff between the United States and Iran, and believe me, the clock is ticking down to what could be a major, major decision point. Let's get right into what's at stake here.
Yep, that's the deadline. According to our chief foreign correspondent Trey Yingst, who's right there on the ground in Israel, a very fragile ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran is set to expire in just 72 hours. And as you can imagine, with that deadline getting closer and closer, the entire region is on high alert.
And if you need any more proof of how serious this is, President Trump reportedly just held a meeting in the Situation Room. Now, this isn't some casual chat. We're talking top generals, military commanders, cabinet officials, all of them reviewing the entire battlefield. That tells you just how seriously the White House is taking this.
So, how did we get here? With just hours left on the clock, what is going on? Let's break down this crisis as it's developing right now in the region.
The heart of all this, the geographic center, is the Strait of Hormuz. It's one of the most critical waterways in the entire world. And what we're seeing from recent events is that Iran seems to be, well, testing the limits of this very fragile agreement.
So what's actually happening on the water? Well, it's messy, it's contradictory, and it's chaotic. Over the weekend, you had 2 vessels reporting they were actually fired upon. At the same time, other ships managed to get through just fine. Meanwhile, the U.S. military is very active. CENTCOM turned away nearly 24 vessels just for not following warnings. It's a really dangerous mix that's creating a ton of uncertainty.
So, all of this confusion boils down to one simple question. Is the Strait of Hormuz open for business or is it closed? And, the craziest part is that nobody seems to agree on the answer, not even the Iranians themselves.
And this is where things get really interesting. It's basically a war of words. You have President Trump and, get this, the Iranian foreign minister both saying, yep, this strait is open. But then Iran's own state-run media and its super powerful Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, come out and publicly say the exact opposite of their own minister. They claim it's closed and that they're in control. That kind of internal division just shows you how volatile this whole situation really is.
Okay, so this mess, this posturing, it's all happening against a backdrop of some really intense direct talk from both sides.
From the U.S. side, President Trump gave a pretty blunt, and you could say dismissive, assessment of Iran's military. He basically suggested that the U.S. has such overwhelming superiority that there's no comparison.
But Iran? Oh, they're firing right back with their own story. An Iranian official came out and claimed that no, actually they hold the advantage. And they made a direct threat to the entire global economy, saying they could shut down oil production and pull 15 million barrels a day right off the market.
So you've got all this talk, back and forth, but the U.S. isn't just talking. Reports show that dozens of additional American transport planes were sent to the region just this weekend. That's a pretty clear signal that the U.S. is getting ready in case these negotiations completely fall apart.
But look, this isn't just about ships and planes. There's a huge economic battle going on here, and it's all centered on a U.S. blockade that is really squeezing the Iranian regime.
So why does the U.S. think it has the upper hand here? Well, it all comes down to oil. The United States itself gets very little of its oil through the strait. We're talking just a few percentage points. For some of our European allies, that number's higher, maybe 20 to 30%. But the countries that would be hurt the most by a shutdown, like China, are the same ones Iran needs to do business with. And that dynamic is a huge piece of the American strategy.
So the key weapon here for the U.S. is this blockade. It's designed to flat out stop Iran from exporting its oil. It's been described as choking off the main ability for the Iranian economy to function. I mean, it targets the absolute lifeblood of their government's money.
And this is why that blockade is so darn effective. A staggering 90% of Iran's entire oil processing happens at one single place, Karg Island. And to get that oil out to the world, it has to go through the Strait of Hormuz. This creates an unbelievably vulnerable choke point for their entire economy.
You can just imagine the kind of pressure this is putting on Iran internally. Their oil storage tanks are almost completely full, and they can't just stop pumping because that could cause permanent, super expensive damage to their oil wells. So while they're talking tough in public, sources are saying that behind closed doors, Iranian officials are very worried. The feeling on the ground is that the U.S. holds all the cards here, both at the negotiating table and on the battlefield.
All right, so this all leads us back to where we started, the final hours before this ceasefire runs out. With all this economic and military pressure at a fever pitch, what are the last moves on the chessboard?
Now, that doesn't mean diplomacy is totally dead in the water. A delegation from Pakistan has been in Tehran trying to mediate, trying to find a way out of this. But with the clock ticking down so fast, these really feel like last-ditch efforts to stop a much bigger conflict.
But the U.S. position is crystal clear. President Trump has said he'd prefer a deal, but he has zero interest in extending this ceasefire deadline. That basically puts the ball right in Iran's court. They have a choice. Make what the U.S. calls a good faith deal right now, or this whole standoff is going to escalate.
And according to our correspondent Trey Yingst, who's watching all this unfold from the region, it really just comes down to two very clear, very stark options. Option A is the deal. Iran agrees to give up its highly enriched uranium, the key ingredient for a potential nuclear weapon. Or there's option B. The U.S. will take that uranium by other means, and the war in some capacity, as they say, will be back on. There really doesn't seem to be any middle ground.
So here we are, two world powers, one tiny, crucial waterway, and a clock that is just about to hit zero. The stage is set for either a major breakthrough or a total breakdown. The only question for the next 72 hours is, which one will it be?